And this is a journey through a study that is going to, in a large sense, very much unlock the Scriptures for you. This is a journey through an understanding about the nation of Israel. And I'm specifically mentioning the word nation here. We're talking about the nation of Israel, not just the physical bloodline Israelites, but the whole concept of the nation of Israel. Who were they? What was the past? What's the present? And what's the future for the nation of Israel? It's a very important thing that we study because when we finish you'll understand. Because you'll find that you can't probably read 20 or 30 verses in your book and not find a reference somewhere in there to the nature of the nation of Israel, to the teaching that we're going to go through in the next couple of weeks. This first teaching is really designed to stimulate a lot of questions. I promise that by the end we will have answered hopefully all of them, but certainly most of them. I do also want to point out that in this very first set of verses that we're going to look through, we're going to read a lot of verses that are there to make you go, kind of make you wonder. Verses that make you go, what does that mean? Why is that there? How come I never noticed that verse before? It's always been there. And when we look at those verses, we're going to see that it doesn't do a whole lot of good things in its initial perception for the Gentile. It's only an initial perception. The Gentiles have a wonderful place in all of this, an equal and wonderful, blessed place in participation in this. But the verses, when you first look at them, might seem that way. And I want to make sure before we get started that I mention that so that the Gentiles, which is almost everybody in the room, don't get offended by what some of the verses seem to be saying initially. That's why they should make you go, Okay? Let's begin with our verses in Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1. Now I'm going to have to do a pretty good job today of resisting as we open up all of these questions to resist answering them for you immediately because they will come during the flow of the teaching. Let's start in Matthew chapter 2 and verse 1. And Yeshua, having been born in Bethlehem of Yehuda in the days of Herodes the sovereign, see, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born sovereign of the Yehudim, king of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to do reverence to him. And Herodes the sovereign, having heard, was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Let's stop there for a second. Notice that it says in that second verse, they're looking for someone born king or sovereign of the Yehudim, of the Jews. Sovereign of the Jews. Continuing in verse 4, it says, And having gathered all his chief priests, Herodes did this, and the scribes of the people together, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. So he made a connection that this king was to also be Messiah. Notice the connection. And they said to him in verse 5, In Bethlehem of Yehuda, for thus it has been written by the prophet, But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Yehuda, the land of Judah, you are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, Yehuda. For out of you shall come a ruler who shall shepherd my people, Israel. Okay, now we've got another part of the puzzle here. This is one who will come as a ruler who will shepherd the Gentiles. It doesn't say that. It doesn't even say the Jews. It says he will shepherd my people, Israel. Here's our first reference right there in the very beginning of Matthew, the beginning of Matthew, that this Messiah will not only be a Messiah, be a ruler, be a king, and he's going to be here to rule over and shepherd Israel. Now let's go and actually read where that quote comes from, because it says there's a quote from the prophet. It's in the book of Micah, chapter 5. And that's on page 621 in the Scriptures. Micah chapter 5, page 621 in the Scriptures. And we're going to look at verse 2. But you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, you who are little among the clans of Yehuda, out of you shall come forth to me the one to become ruler in Israel. And his coming forth are of old and from everlasting. So this is one that's very interesting. Whoever this is from of old and from everlasting. Therefore he shall give them up until the time that she who is in labor has given birth, and the remnant of his brothers return to the children of Israel. Okay, here's another one of those parts where you go, what is he talking about? Who are these brothers who return to the children of Israel? The remnant of the brothers. Verse 4, and he shall stand and shepherd in the strength of Yahweh, in the excellency of the name of Yahweh is Elohim, and they shall dwell, for at that time he shall be great to the ends of the earth. Well, did not Yeshua come and stand in the strength of Yahweh, in the excellency of the name of Yahweh? He told everyone, he said, I came in my Father's name. Verse 5, and this shall be peace when Asher comes into our land, and when he treads in our palaces. We shall raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 leaders of men, and they shall shepherd the land of Asher with the sword, and the land of Nimrod at its entrances, and he shall deliver us from Asher when he comes into our land and when he treads within our borders. Now here's the key. Verse 7, again, and the remnant of Yaakov, of Jacob. Who's that? Israel. Again, the remnant of Israel, the remnant of Yaakov, shall be in the midst of many peoples. So that's where they are. Here's a little hint. The remnant that is going to be brought back and returned in verse 3, we find out in verse 7, is somehow in the midst of many peoples, as dew from Yahweh, as showers on the grass, which do not wait for a man, nor delay for the sons of men. By the way, the word there for many peoples is goyim. Goyim, which translates nations, peoples, or Gentiles. The Hebrew word is goyim. Verse 8, and the remnant of Yaakov, the remnant of Israel, shall be among the Gentiles. There's the clarity right there. In the midst of many peoples, like a lion among the beasts of the forest, like a young lion among the flocks of the sheep, who, if he passes through, shall both tread down and shall tear, and there is no one to deliver. This is all little seeds we're planting in our thoughts, so that as we go through the teaching, we'll go back and remember. And we will, at the very end, come back to these verses, and they will make a lot more sense. They'll make a lot more sense. So we know that already that out of Bethlehem will come a ruler who will shepherd the people Israel. We learn here from the actual quote from the prophet that this remnant of Yaakov, this remnant of Israel, shall be somehow, at some point, scattered among the Gentiles. Let's continue now in the book of Matthew, the book of Matityahu, chapter 15. Matityahu, Matthew chapter 15, and verse 22. Matthew 15, Matityahu 15, and verse 22. And see, a woman of Canaan, of Canaan, came from those borders and cried out to him, saying, have compassion on me, O Master, son of David. My daughter is badly demon-possessed. Now, on the surface, this is not that unusual a circumstance, for someone to come to Yeshua and say, I've got a situation. I've got a child that's demon-possessed. I've got a healing that's necessary. I've got some sort of a thing that you can handle. But what was unusual is look at how he reacted to it. He said, but he did not answer her a word, and his taught ones came and asked him, saying, send her away, because she cries after us. And he answering said, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But she came and was bowing to him, saying, Master, help me. And he answering said, well, it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the little dogs. But she said, yes, Master, for even the little dogs eat the crumbs which fall from the master's table. And Yeshua answering said to her, O woman, your belief is great. Let it be to you as you desire. And her daughter was healed from that hour. Now, there should be a lot of things popping up in this section. First of all, the verse that jumps right out at me is, it says in verse 24, I was not sent except to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Oops. What's that all about? Where did that verse all of a sudden sneak into your scriptures if you've never really thought about that before? Who is Israel? It doesn't say the Gentiles here. It doesn't say the church here. It doesn't say the Jews here. It says Israel. It says, I was not sent except, this is the only reason I was sent. This is the Messiah himself speaking. Was for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And why did he end up treating this woman in such a way as he did? Well, she was from Canaan, from Canaan. Very likely an assimilated Israelite. And she had been looked upon by her brothers, those of Judah who were still visible Israelites, as basically like little dogs. That's how they looked at their brothers who had given way to the assimilation temptation and had gone after other mighty ones that they had not known, that was not Yahweh, right? And so they were looked at